All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see. Looks like they knocked out a wall or two after I left. Guess it took a few people to replace me. This lift could use a few dry cells. Let's see what you're hiding down there, old friend. Oh my God. Joey, what were you doing? Alright, how do I get this to work? Who put this here?
At this point, I don't get what Joey's plan is for this company. The animations sure aren't being finished on time anymore, and I certainly don't see why we need this machine. It's noisy, it's messy, and who needs that much ink anyway? Also, get this. Joey had each one of us donate something from our workstation. We put them on these little pedestals in the break room to help appease the gods, Joey says. Keep things going. I think he's lost his mind, but hey, he writes the checks. But I tell you what, if one more of these pipes burst, I'm out of here.
Always on time. Okay, that's all of them. Now I just need to get the ink flowing somehow. Should be a switch around here somewhere. Then I can start up the main power.
It's dark and it's cold, and it's stuck in behind every single wall. In some places, I swear this godforsaken ink is clear up to my knees. Whoever thought that these crummy pipes could hold up under this kind of strain? Either knows something about pressure I don't, or he's some kind of idiot. But the real worst part about all this are the noises the system makes, like a dying dog in its last legs. Make no mistake, this place, this machine, and this whole darn thing, it just isn't natural. You can bet I won't be doing any more repair jobs for Mr. Joey Drew.
This will definitely come in handy. Oh, my head. What happened? Well, I guess there's only one thing to do. Press on. See if I can find a way out. How did this place get so big?
He appears from the shadows to rain his sweet blessings upon me. The figure of ink that shines in the darkness. I see you, my savior. I pray you hear me. Those old songs, yes, I still sing them. For I know you are coming to save me, and I will be swept into your final loving embrace. But love requires sacrifice. Can I get an amen?
I said, can I get an amen?
Excuse me, can you help me? Hello? Where the hell did he go? Need to get power to this gate somehow. Should be a couple switches nearby. Then maybe I can open it. Really dark in here. Looks like the stairwell is flooded. If I'm gonna get out of here, I'll need to find a way to drain it. Punching in. Well, there's the pump switch, all right. One hell of a link blocking the door, though. I could just stop that ink from flowing. Maybe I can get in.
It's like it disappeared in the thin air or something. All I can think of is that it must have fallen in one of the garbage cans when I was making my rounds last week. I just hope nobody tells Sammy, because if he finds out I lost my keys again, I'm out of here. Strange thing happens. I'll be up here in my booth, the band will be swinging, and suddenly Sammy Lawrence just comes marching in and shuts the whole thing down. Tells us all to wait in the hall. Then I hear something. He starts up my projector and he dashes from the projection booth and down to the recording studio like the little devil himself was hidden behind. A few seconds later, projector turns on. But Sammy, oh no, he don't come out for a long time. This man is weird. Crazy weird. I've got half a mind to talk to Mr. Drew about all this, I really do. But then again, I have to admit, Mr. Drew's got his own peculiarities.
Every artistic person needs a sanctuary. Joey Drew has his, and I've got mine. To enter, you need only know my favorite song. The violin shudders with a piercing voice. The drum thunders in triumph. The violin again screams. The drum echoes out once more. Sing my song, and my sanctuary will open to you.
Better get overtime for this. One down. Oh no, there's no valve. Where did it go? Was that thing holding my valve?
I love the quiet. And that's hard to come by in these busy times. And yeah, sure, it may stink to high heaven down here, but it's just perfect for an old lyricist like me. Sammy's songs always got some bounce, but if I didn't get away once in a while, they'd never have any words to go with them. So I'll keep my mind to singing and my nose closed.
Sorry I had to do that. Nice hat, though. Okay, that should do it. What the heck is this?
Rest your head. It's time for bed. There we go now, nice and tight. We wouldn't want our sheep roaming away now, would we? No, we wouldn't. I must admit, I am honored you came all the way down here to visit me. It almost makes what I'm about to do seem cruel. But the believers must honor their savior. I must have him notice me. Wait, you look familiar to me. That face.
Not now, for our Lord is calling to us, my little sheep. The time of sacrifice is at hand. And then I will finally be freed from this prison, this inky, dark abyss I call a body. Shh. Quiet. Listen. I can hear him crawling above. Crawling. Let us begin. The ritual must be completed. Soon he will hear me. He will set us free.
Sheep, 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 it's time for sleep. Rest your head. It's time for bed. In the morning, you may wake. Or in the morning, you'll be dead. Hear me, Bendy. Arise from the darkness. Arise and claim my offering. Free me, I beg you. I summon you, Ink Demon. Show your face and take this tender sheep. No, my lord, stay back. I am your prophet. I am your God.
Hello? Someone there? I know you're in here. Come out and show yourself. Boris? I'm not getting out of here that easy. Need to open the door, but the lever's missing. Boris probably has it. Hey, buddy, you seen that lever handle around? Or are you holding it hostage until I make you something to eat? I thought so. Let's see what we got. That should be enough. Here you go. Let's see what's out there. Don't wander off. Looks like it's really dark up ahead. Let's find some light. Don't be scared, Boris. I'll keep the light near you so you don't get lost. Did you hear that? Yeah, me either. Another dead end. I don't see any other way through. You got any ideas, Boris? Wow, I don't remember any of this. Another day, another dollar. Why is there always something blocking the door? Gotta be a way through.
I don't be seeing what the big deal is. So what if I went and painted some of those bendy dolls with a crooked smile? That's sure no reason for Mr. Drew to be flying off the handle at me. And if he really wants to be so helpful, he could be telling me what I'm to be doing with this warehouse I got full of that angel whatchamacallit. Not a scrap of that mess myself. They probably have to melt it all down to be rid of it all.
wondrous web. Come along now. Let's see if you're worthy to walk with angels.
Everything feels like it's coming apart. When I walked into the recording booth today, Sammy was there with that Allison. Apparently, I didn't get the memo. Alice Angel will now be voiced by Miss Allison Pendle. A part of me died when he said that. There's gotta be a way to fix this.
Boris! Oh, you scared me to death. Don't suppose you found anything we can use to protect ourselves with. Guess we'll do. Looks like to open this, we're gonna need to throw 2 levers at once. You get this one. I'll find the other.
Alright, let's go over this again. If the pressure goes over 45, I screw the safety bolt in tighter, right?
No, for the last time you do that, you blow every pipe in this place. If it reaches 45, you unhook the safety switch.
You sure? You know, this sounds harder than comparing earwax to beeswax.
Look, it's not that difficult. Just keep an eye on the gauge.
Look, pal, if you think I'm doing my job and yours, I'm out of here.
were so interesting. So different. I have to say, I'm an instant fan. Looks like you've got a date with an angel. Come to me now. Level 9. Just follow the screams. Step out of your cage.
Back to
There's a
the room.
whole twisted world out here.
These blasted elevators. Sometimes they open, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come, and sometimes they keep on going to hell and back. I keep telling these people, if Mr. Joey Drew keeps cutting corners like this, someone's sure to end up falling to their death. And it sure ain't gonna be me. I'm taking the stairs.
Look around. It took so many of them to make me so beautiful. Anything less than perfect was left behind. I had to do it. She
Who would have thought? Me having lunch with Joey Drew. Apparently times are tougher than I thought. For a moment there, I thought I'd be stuck with the check. But I gotta say, he wasn't at all what I expected. Quite the charmer. He even called me Alice. I liked it.
Now we come to the question. Do I kill you? Do I tear you apart to my heart's delight? The choices of the beautiful are unbearable. How's a girl to choose? Take this little freak, for instance. He crawled in here, trailing his tainted ink to my door. It could have touched me. It could have pulled me back. Do you know what it's like? Living in the dark puddles? It's a buzzing, screaming well of voices. Bits of your mind swimming like fish in a bowl. The first time I was born from its inky womb, I was a wiggling, pussing, shapeless slug. The second time, well, it made me an angel. I will not let the demon touch me again. I'm so close now. So almost perfect. Yes, I will spare you. For now. Better yet, I'll even let you ascend and leave this place. If you will do a few eensy, weensy little favors for me first. Return to the lift, my little errand boy. We have work to do. My machines are hungry. Gather me some spare parts. There are so few rules to our world now. So little truth.
Another day, another dollar.
But there is one rule we all know and respect down here. Beware the ink demon. Stay out in the open for too long and he will find you. For if you see him, you'd better hide. If you don't, well, I enjoy hiding. Now, let us begin our work. Have you met him? The Ink Demon. hears everything. Every creak of the floor. Every rustle of paper. I wouldn't run so fast if I were you. You never know what will draw him in.
One down. This one's empty. Nothing in here.
Ah, that should be plenty. Return them to me. And try not to die on the way back.
Sammy said I had talent. He was always a good fighter. Still, he was once a very handsome man.
Always on time.
Swollen ones. They're just stuffed full of extra thick ink. It makes me sick. And yet, it's the perfect thing for keeping myself together. If you're gonna catch them, you'll have to learn to move quietly. Come back to my door. I have something that you'll need. Thrall. The task is done. Bring me back my equipment, please.
Everyone's walking around here like Grandma just died. Nothing but angry faces everywhere. These people gotta lighten up. I mean, hello, you make cartoons. Your job is to make people laugh. I'm telling you, if these people don't start cracking a smile every now and then, I'm out of here.
Once upon a time, there was an angel, and she was beautiful and loved by all.
She was perfect. No matter what Joey says.
I better get overtime for this.
I'll make this simple. Look for valve pads. Turn the little wheel. Then
I bought a new house last month. It's a lovely little place. It's rustic, homey, remote, everything I wanted. The man I bought it from built it himself 45 years ago. He told me that. He told me everything about it, from the depth of the basement to the pitch of the roof. It wasn't until closing day came that he told me the last thing about it, though. We were at the lawyer's office in town, me in my suit and him in his overalls. He looked nervous, fidgety about something. Finally, he sidled over to me and cleared his throat. "Something I've got to tell you," he said. "You ain't gonna sit right with me if I don't." I raised an eyebrow to him, inviting him to continue. But in my head, I was cycling through all the potential problems he might be about to drop on me. Leaking roof, termites, septic system problems, dry well. None of it was going to chase me away from his house. Everything about it was perfect. I definitely intend to bring some extra cash out of him for whatever it was, though. "Y'all ain't gonna believe me, and that's fine," he said. "I wouldn't either. But do me a favor and listen all the way through. Then you can think what you like, and we'll sign the papers and never see each other again. Or you can back out if you like, and I won't hold it against you. But I gotta tell you, so you know going in." He took a deep breath and looked over my shoulder into the distance, as if deciding where to start. "A couple of years back is when it all started," he began. "My dog started whining. Every Sunday, 3 a.m., just like clockwork. Well, Monday, I guess it'd be, at that point. Don't matter. The point is, he'd whine. Now, Biscuit had a real specific whine. He'd only do it when someone was coming up to the house. I never heard it no time outside of visitors. And 3 a.m. Sunday. Don't mind telling you, it scared me something fierce the first time he did it. Woke me up out of a dead sleep. I was at the door, shotgun in hand, before I was fully awake. Shouted out into the yard, but I got no answer. Gave it a few minutes, then went back to bed. Week goes, nothing happens. And then next Sunday, 3 a.m., Biscuit's awake and whining. I'm up and at the door, and same as before, nothing. He must have seen my face at this point because he said, "Look, I got a point, but this matters. I'll try to hurry it along." Another deep breath, and he continued. It went on like this, and I started sleeping through it eventually. Dog was getting old is all. It happens. Except a couple months later, maybe 3, dog starts whining. And then the outside porch light cuts on. I had it on a motion sensor. Put it in years back to scare off raccoons and such like. Mainly, it just turned on and blinded me getting out of my truck coming home late at night. But it ain't ever turned on for no reason before. Light coming in through my window woke me up. And my hackles sure stood straight up then, I'll tell you. I took it apart the next day. Looked at the wiring, but it was solid as you like. Fair puzzled me. But eventually I figured that Biscuit must have been onto something after all. Some kind of critter prowling around the house. He'd gotten bold last night. Come close enough to trip the sensor. Easy enough explanation. Until next Sunday, when the light went on again. 3 a.m., just as you like. So this... I began, but he held up a hand to stop me. Let me finish, if you would. No questions I can answer anyway, not rightly. I just gotta tell you how it is. The next week, I stayed up till 3 a.m. to catch whatever it was. I was sitting in the main room, gun at the ready, and when Biscuit started whining, I was by the door at the ready. I had my hand on the knob, and when I saw that light cut on through the window, I whipped the door open. There was nothing there. Nothing at all. Not a blade of grass moved, not a shadow twitched. I stood there, looking until the light went out again, and then I closed the door. I took the light apart again, but there was just nothing wrong with it. I tried to ignore the whole thing, but it was fair driving me crazy. Woke me up every Sunday, did biscuit and that light. And then one day it got worse. I heard a creak. Now I know old houses talk. They settle in the night, groan and shift and talk to themselves, sure as shooting. But I know every noise this house makes. And I know that creak. It's the sound of the second floorboard inside the front door. Thing is, the front door makes a god-awful creak all by itself. Ain't no way to open that without alerting the whole house. Thought about fixing it any number of times, but in the end I figured it was as good as any security system, so I left it. The front door didn't make no noise that night. Not a solitary sound. But I know the creak of that floorboard sure as I know my own name. And something had just walked on it. He paused here to wipe his eyes with the heels of his hands. I gathered up my courage, and I walked through that house, turning lights on as I went. Weren't nobody in there. Next week, same thing. Biscuit whining, porch light on, floorboard creaked. It was starting to get me proper spooked, I don't mind saying. And when, after a few months, that first creak started being followed after a pause by a second one, I got me a realtor, and I put the house up for sale. That was a month and more ago, and I ain't been back since. I'll go to get my stuff when this is all done, but I'll do it midday on a Tuesday. You don't gotta believe me. You think whatever you want. But that second creak comes from a board the far side of the main room, all the way to the hallway. You're up this Sunday at 3 a.m., you'll hear it. If you're man enough to stay in that house and find out what's coming, more power to ya. I built this house, and I'm dead sorry to leave it. But I ain't gonna be there when whatever it is finishes whatever trip it's making. I thanked him for his honesty, though I'm sure the skepticism was clear in my voice. I signed the papers anyway, of course, and took possession of the house. The man shook my hand, wished me luck, and we parted ways. I didn't give any credence to his story, not the least bit. I moved into my new house, and I slept like a baby. Until Sunday, when I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. I was confused at first as to what had woken me. It was dark in the room, but a bright light was shining in from outside. In my disoriented, half-asleep state, it took me a minute before I realized it was the front porch light shining in through my window. The old man's story rushed back to me, and in the dark it seemed almost plausible. I held my breath, listening, and heard nothing. I was just starting to laugh at myself when it came. A creak from the front room. I sat in bed, silent, listening. A minute passed before I heard it. The second creak. Closer. Louder. Nearly from the hallway. Surely it was just a ridiculous story. Just a tale a lonely old man imagined. Or maybe even made up. I wanted to believe that. Then came a third creak. This one right outside my closed bedroom door. And almost on its heels, a fourth one. This one was inside the room. I sat frozen for a long moment, then shot up my hands and fumbled for the bedside lamp. It burst into light, casting its glow across the room, revealing absolutely nothing. Nothing was there. I got up and paced around, checking under the bed, in the bathroom, in the closet. There was no one hiding there. Nothing that could have made the noise. And yet, when I crossed in front of the door, the floorboard beneath my feet creaked, an exact match for the tone I'd just heard. My bedroom door was closed. My front door was locked. I checked it. But when I returned to my room from checking the front door, the floor squeaked under my feet in 4 separate places. Once just inside the door, once right before the hallway, once right outside my room, and once just inside. Each one a distinct, identifiable sound. Each one a sound I'd heard earlier that night. I didn't sleep anymore that night. I turned on every light and watched TV until dawn. I told myself I'd call the realtor in the morning and put the house up for sale. And yet, by the time morning rolled around, it had all started to seem a little silly. A new house, a goofy story. And I'd been ready to abandon reality and believe in ghosts. I made myself breakfast by dawn's breaking light, went to sleep as the sun started up the sky, and woke up feeling foolish around noon. A few squeaks and creaks, and I was ready to move out. Embarrassing. And so when the light cut on and woke me up last Sunday, I pulled a pillow over my head, determined to ignore it. And when the first creak came, I told myself it was a coincidence, a random noise that probably happened all night, and I just didn't hear most of the time. Then came the second, at the same pause as before. Then the third, and the fourth, in relatively rapid succession. And although I repeated the mantra that it was just an old house, just stray noises, I was having a hard time clinging to that thought. Then the mattress shifted slightly, as something placed its weight on the corner. I heard the springs groan, felt the bed sink a little beneath me, rolling me toward whatever had just sat down. I lay there, pillow over my head, wide awake and frozen in fear for the rest of the night. I don't know when the weight went away, but I didn't dare move until I saw the gray light of dawn creeping in under the edges of my pillow. First thing Monday, I was at the realtor's office, putting the house up for sale. From there, I went to the hotel in town and got a room. I lived in the same set of clothes until Wednesday, which is when I finally got the courage up to go back to that house and get some of my stuff. Even then, I did it at noon. Some folks came to look at the house today. The realtor tells me they've put in an offer. I couldn't be happier. I've woken in terror every night, dreaming that I felt the weight of that thing joining me in bed again. On the good nights, I wake up when it sits down. On the bad ones, it has time to get in, to climb under the covers, to wrap an arm around me. Its brittle fingers drifting across my face as I lie there, unblinking, trying not to scream. I appreciate why the old man told me about the house before I bought it. He wanted to absolve himself, to know that I had a chance to walk away. I get where he was coming from. I'm not giving this couple that chance. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me.
For 105 years, the Boy Scouts have stood with their values and stood with their morals, but are now...
It's getting so that I need to tell someone about this. I'm posting it here to limit my liability. I mean, it makes sense, right? I'm just telling a story. So you can believe what you want. I know what I know to be true. And that's good enough for me. Actually, it's not really true. I don't know what's true or what I believe anymore. I just know that I haven't been able to sleep for a few weeks now. I work for a small consulting firm hired for project management on the Edmonton AB Valley Line LRT construction. I was happy when our company was awarded the contract, but with what I know, I wouldn't accept any amount of money in the world to do this job now. I should give you a little background. I'm a third-generation Edmontonian. My grandfather originally moved here from St. Paul as a child in the 30s. My dad owned a successful development company, and when I graduated from the U of A, I took over the project management wing. Again, we were a small in-house company, so when we were tapped by the city of Edmonton to undertake the very large infrastructure project that was expanding transit, we were ecstatic. I should also note that as a lifelong Edmontonian, with roots going back here in this city, I know that thing is not supposed to be there. Everyone knows it's not supposed to be there. March 15th is when most people found out about it. A concrete mass the size of a car under the riverbed in the path of the Tawadana Bridge that is being constructed. Our press release would simply focus on any future traffic delays based on having to prolong our operation. Hundreds of thousands of people hearing the news and going, well that's interesting. They're all assuming that finding random things underground is normal when you're excavating to build a bridge. They're assuming we have all that under control. But what if it was different? If we uncovered a mass grave, would it make people wonder what it was doing there? What if we uncovered an unexploded bomb, or a dinosaur skeleton, or a treasure trove of ancient artifacts? What would it take for people to look up from their Tim Hortons and ask, what's that doing there? It was actually the 12th of March we found the thing. It took us almost a week until we decided to let on to the general public what we had found. And even then, we didn't say much about it. Monday, March 12th, 2018. It was Monday morning. I dropped my kids off at daycare and was merging onto the Henday Freeway from Sherwood Park when I got a call from Bill, who's on the dig site. Pete, I need you on site. I could sense panic in his voice. I was concerned there'd been a workplace accident. I was just heading to my office. What's up? I told Bill, speaking louder than usual so that my voice would be picked up by the Bluetooth in my truck. I don't know how to explain this. I'll just have to show you when you get here. He paused for a second. Get here quick, he added, before hanging up. I felt a sharp flash of pain in my bowels. Since I had taken on this project, I had been experiencing it more and more. I rushed to the side and jumped out of my truck, meeting Bill in the staging area. What is it? I pleaded when I walked up to him. He was with some of the agents from the company that we had hired to do the cofferdam work. They were poring over reports and drafts. I don't know how to explain this, but we found something in the riverbed. He shrugged and started leading me toward the bank. Okay. What? I thought. I thought he was going to say it was a body. That's all we needed. Some sort of murder investigation to tie us up. I mean, it would be sad for the victim and everything, but all of the companies involved would have to pay a penalty if the completion deadline was extended. It's a body, isn't it? Fuck, I knew it. I ran my hand down the side of my face. No, it's not a body. It's a big slab of concrete. He shrugged again. I looked out over the water and back at him. I don't see it, I said dumbly. It's in the riverbed right where we're supposed to be constructing one of the supports. He put his hands on his hips. This was worse news than if it was a body. It was sure to delay construction. Can we take it out? I said, hoping that the simple solution would be all that was required to rectify the situation. No, we can't take it out. It's too big. It'll mess with the cofferdaming and it's below the actual riverbed itself. So if we pull it, it'll create a sinkhole. He began walking again, and I followed him into his office in a run-down modular trailer. How long is this going to take us extra? I moaned. Well, we can incorporate it into the structure. That'd be the easiest solution. He pulled out some papers and thrust them in my direction. Great, let's do that then. I smiled, shit-eating grin and everything. There's something else though. Okay. I hated how cryptic he was being. At this point, I just wanted to cut to the chase and tell me how much it was going to cost, and how much more work I'd have to do because of it. It's not on any of the geotechnical reports. It's not on any technical drawings. I consulted with our engineers, and they say it's not even on historical drawings. No one remembers anything ever being there. He motioned at the papers I was holding. I rifled through them. Huh, you're right. I placed the papers back on his desk. And that was my reaction. And that's why I say, what would it take for you to have heard this story more than in passing? More than just that 5 or so seconds you think, oh, well, that's odd. That's what I thought. It was odd. Nothing more, nothing less. I didn't question why there was a block of concrete under the North Saskatchewan riverbed. A man-made block of concrete that wasn't on any technical drawing, that wasn't in any history books. The river that had estimated begun flowing through this area 2,500 years ago. A river that carried countless indigenous people over the centuries. That explorers first sailed down in 1760. That the original fort was constructed next to in 1795. That hosted a town and then a city thereafter. A river that never had anything built where a concrete block the size of a car was now under the riverbed. That none of the people in history that I just mentioned ever noticed. A man-made, giant concrete block under the river where nothing had ever existed before. I didn't question how it got there. I was just thinking of how much money and time we needed to spend on it. It wasn't until Bill said the next thing that I questioned it. It's making a sound, he suggested. What is? I thought he was talking about his laptop, which he was turning toward me. The big block. It makes a sound. He opened up a file from his email. We had some industrial divers down to survey it. Shit got weird. He kind of chuckled, but that didn't hide the pensive look on his face. Immediately, they came back up. They both complained they were really nauseous. Now maybe they were sick. but they both felt better when they got back up, so they thought maybe something was wrong with their equipment. They checked everything, and everything was okay. So they went down there again, and it happened again. So they pushed through, set the equipment, and then we got some recordings. He stopped while he fumbled with his mouse, trying to click open the file he wanted to show me that he was taking a very long time to open. Well, okay, I'll show you this in a sec. He winced at the slow machine, and then began again. Anyway, so the thing, we get these readings back, and Bill was trying to explain, but he couldn't quite describe it. He was somewhat frantic and kept stopping to look at the ceiling. The thing makes a sound. Not like sound, but a vibration. Infrasound, one of our engineers called it. Like a very low, like 7 hertz, like a vibration kind of thing. He turned back to his computer, cursing it out. I should say it is not uncommon in construction and engineering for stationary objects to vibrate at some sort of frequency. In fact, the example I can tell you about without getting into too much technical detail would be the example of a suspension bridge that begins to undulate in a wave. And of course, any sort of vibration like that would create a sound. And sometimes these vibrations create larger and larger vibration, constructive interference that eventually destroys whatever is doing the humming. But a concrete block by itself normally doesn't do this. So while it was odd, it was still inside the realm of possibility for me. So, I didn't know where he was going with this. I was a little taken aback, but I wasn't still completely convinced the problem was worth more than considering just the amount of money and time to fix it. So, Bill started, but was interrupted by an extremely loud noise. His computer had started playing the sound file he was trying to open, and it caused an intensely loud low distortion to come through his speakers, which were full volume. I clutched my ears, and then my stomach as it began to instantly hurt. He clicked furiously to turn it off. "That's the noise?" I yelled over the buzzing. He kept clicking to close the file, but it wouldn't close. "I can't..." He fumbled around desperately. I instinctively reached for the connection for the speakers and violently yanked it out. We were both standing there, panting, nauseous. Bill looked embarrassed. We both sat back down and exhaled deeply. I still didn't know what to say about it. We both sat in uncomfortable silence. I was waiting for him to tell me more, but I realized he didn't know any more than I did. And I was the project manager. He was expecting me to have an answer or a solution. I began, not really knowing what I was going to say, but I had to say something. "So the engineers can't take it out," I confirmed. He nodded slowly. "It's, loud?" I wasn't getting anywhere. Bill began to shuffle the papers on its desk into a neat pile. "Did the structural engineers say anything?" I said, looking out the window. It had been a foggy morning, but the sun was peeking out, a grayish-yellow hue settling over the river valley. "They're doing a report on it," Bill kind of mumbled. I began to rise from my chair, eager to get out of the trailer and back to the safety of my office. I thought, maybe the answer would come to me. Or maybe it'd resolve itself. Or maybe the engineers would come back and say it was no more difficult than extracting a tooth. And maybe they would say the humming was some natural phenomenon. And maybe they'd say the concrete got there from some mistake when they were originally putting up the Clover Bar footbridge that we had demolished to make way for our construction. Maybe it wasn't that there was a man-made concrete block under the riverbed that had no history and was making a noise. Tuesday, March 13th, 2018. The next morning, I lifted myself out of bed at the sound of my alarm, morose and heavier than the sum of my parts. I dragged myself around the kitchen as if I was a marionette hanging from strings while I fed the kids and got them ready for daycare. I hadn't slept well. I kept worrying about the block, the practical items, the cost, the time, the liability. Then, the impractical. What was it doing there? Why was it making a sound? Then I had fallen asleep only an hour or two before my alarm was to go off, dreaming I was standing on the riverbank while black clouds covered the sky. In the river, I could see a light. It was the block, glowing an intense gray light, like sun through clouds on a bleak day. And the hum it was emitting was pulling me toward it like a magnet. I walked into the water, and I could breathe underwater. And the cube pulled me towards it, and I became part of it. And when I was part of the cube, I was a part of the earth. And there was an intense sadness in this image of emaciated people all in perfectly formed lines, wearing what looked like gas masks, but otherwise naked. And they were, I don't know how to put this. You know in a dream when you just know something to be true? They were all facing an imminent death, and it wasn't a comforting release, move on to the afterlife type thing. It was a violent death, and there was this intense fear everyone was feeling. I drove in a haze, on autopilot. One of those drives where you're a little shaken when you get to where you're going. Because when you get there, you can't remember any details about how you drove there. What if you mowed someone down? I walked back toward the bank, donning my hard hat, to Bill, who was again speaking to a group of planners and pointing out something to them in the drafts. He let them go, and then he had me follow him into his office again. I called you 6 times, he said, frowning. I looked at my phone. There was indeed 6 missed calls. I somehow didn't hear over the course of my night hours. Oh shit, I'm sorry. I began apologizing profusely. He waved it off with his hand and started. So, we got the engineering report back. They're trying to say maybe there's something wrong with the equipment, or it's background interference, or one of the machines operating in the vicinity caused it, or whatever, Bill said, creating a space through his closed Venetian blinds and peeking out toward the river. But you don't believe that, I said slowly, trying to read him. It's getting louder, Bill said. I snorted by accident. What do you mean it's getting louder? I tried to sound as serious as I could. I began to think this was some sort of very early April Fool's joke. It's louder. I can hear it. I couldn't hear it before. Then yesterday evening, at about 7 p.m., I was in here working on some things, and I swear I could hear it. He resumed peeking suspiciously through his blinds. I felt like either this was a big joke, or he was losing it. Bill, you know, you've been working pretty hard. I started. He snapped back quickly and curtly before I could finish my sentence. I know I can hear it. This fucking thing. Whatever it is. He turned back to the window again. I was worrying now about Bill. I had worked several projects with Bill, between our respective companies. I had met his wife, his children. We had times where we saw each other more than we saw our own families. I'd never known him to be this way, but I was wondering if perhaps I didn't know him as much as I thought I did. What do you think it is? I said slowly. Bill sort of snapped out of it. He turned back towards me and slumped down at his desk. I don't know, he sort of mumbled. He paused for a bit and then changed gears, suddenly springing up. Anyway, the engineers say they can incorporate it at a minimal additional cost, but we're going to have to talk to the city, because it's going to take longer. We'll miss our opening date. He looked forlorn. We both knew that was money out of our pockets. Big money. Suddenly, the intangibles of the mysterious cube were no longer at the forefront, and the day-to-day of paying bills and putting food on the table was. I'll talk to them, I said in a reassuring tone. No one knew this was going to happen, so maybe we can escape penalty. I nodded and patted him on the back. He continued to stare at his desk. That night, once again, I dreamed of the cube. This time I was on the North Riverbank. It was nighttime in the summer. The air was a void, one of those days where there's no wind, and the temperature and humidity are just so that you feel you're in absence of an atmosphere. Everything is hushed, and you don't feel your arm moving through the air. All the leaves are still, and the blades of grass don't move with any breeze. The air doesn't feel cool entering your nostrils. There are no smells of hot pavement from the day, or taste of sweet dew weeping from the trees. Just nothing. The reflections of lights from the building downtown. The campus and high-rise towers of Saskatchewan Drive reflecting in the still water. That's wrong, though. The river is never still. When you stand next to it, you realize it's not the shallow and tranquil picture you see in your car window, driving alongside of it. It's raging, fast-moving, white-tipped, and churning. It's not a pencil line drawn on a map, but a deep expanse cutting the city in half, impossibly wide. But in the dream, I could just walk up to it. The banks were soft and sandy, like that of a still lake under the moon, and I walked into the middle of the river. It was only an inch deep, and the riverbed was asphalt. And out of the river rose the cube, like a monolith. Like the monolith on the album cover of Who's Next. So I disrobed, and I was going to piss on the cube, like the Who pissed on the monolith. But a door opened in it. So I went in. And inside, it was like being in an ice rink. It was cold and white and artificial. And the only thing that wasn't white was a really small piece of writing in the corner of one of the walls. It looked like it was right next to me, but I walked for hours. And when I got to it, it just said, "What now?" Wednesday, March 14th, 2018. I awoke to the sound of my phone ringing in the kitchen. I rushed down the stairs to answer it. "Hello?" I started. Pete speaking. I started again. It was Faraj. He was one of Bill's structural engineers. "You've got an emergency on site, and we'll need you there right away," he said seriously and deliberately. The roads were empty, as it was still very early in the morning. It was still dark. Too early even to have anything broadcasted on the radio. The news day hadn't started yet. Maybe whatever happened, there was still time for it to not get blown out of proportion. I sped to the contractor lot. Faraj looked like his even self. Perfectly pressed checkered blue shirt and gray slacks, polished shoes. You certainly wouldn't know he had been sprung awake at 3 in the morning. The police had phoned him. On site, there were 2 unmarked police cars. "Shit, what is it?" I exclaimed, my head on a swivel. "It's Bill," he said, still keeping an even pace. "Something happened with him," he replied. I thought he was going to say more. Clearly, there was much more to be said. He led me toward the trailer. I opened the door and immediately stepped forth into blood. Faraj began to fill me in again. What the policeman had said, he explained. Bill went outside, and one of the securities, they'd seen him covered in blood. He was screaming and ran towards the river. He pointed. I looked at him and nodded, hoping he would reveal more. He had said, the policeman had said, that he had cut himself. But I guess securities grabbed him before he could go in the water. He probably wouldn't have been able to swim in there. He checked his phone. I'm going to go now, and come back later in the day when I have some meetings. He holstered his phone. The policemen want to talk to you, and you can just take over the situation. I agreed and let the weary man go home. I sat down at Bill's desk and began to send emails. I wanted to go to Bill and find out how he was doing. Hell, just find out what he was doing. But professional responsibility came first. Emails to everyone in public relations and human resources in terms of not releasing statements to the media. Emails to Bill's colleagues about who's going to liaise with me regarding our responsibilities together. Emails to the company that had the proper PPE to clean up blood. Workers were already arriving on site in the morning. Randall came in. He was second to Bill to take his place. I told him he'd have to work in a different room. The essence of Bill was still all over the floor. Finally, at 9:15, I was able to sneak out to drive to the hospital. Bill was bandaged behind a curtain and sedated. I walked in, and he closed his eyes tight. He wouldn't look at me, perhaps ashamed. I sat down next to his hospital bed without saying a word. It wouldn't stop. His voice cracked. It kept showing me things. He breathed deeply and sighed. He began again. It kept showing me everyone was going to die. It wanted me to do it. He coughed. Wait, Bill, what was it showing you? I became alarmed. I don't know, man, just death. Just everyone dying. I can't explain it. I saw people. I didn't see them dying, but I knew they were dying. I knew they were going to die. He gasped. I was reminded of my dream from the other night. Bill, what do you mean it wanted you to do it? I grabbed his arm. I began to squeeze a little too intensely. He pulled away from me. I don't know. I just felt like it was pulling me toward it. And I don't know, I just knew. I knew if I went in there, it would cause everyone dying. And I couldn't stop myself. I tried to stop myself. I thought if I ended it, then I couldn't do it. But it stopped me, and it pulled me, and I had to go. He began weeping. I felt my face burning. I felt butterflies as if I had driven over a dip at speed. A horrible sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong that was much larger than me, or the crew, or the city, or anyone in the world. Bill grabbed my shirt cuff. Tell me I'm not crazy, he wept. What did I say? He was? I was? We both were? Or much more terrifyingly, neither of us were. And there was a cube under the river that was leading us to our destruction. I gotta go, Bill. I darted out of the hospital room. When I arrived back at the site, the restoration crew had just finished cleaning Bill's office. I sat down at his desk. I thumbed through the geotechnical reports again, and the reports from the structural engineers. I stumbled upon the report from the industrial divers. There were some ultrasonic pictures of the mass included. Something in one of them caught my eye. In the photos of the cube itself, there appeared to be something etched. A small group of words. At first, I thought it was a watermark on the side, but I looked closer. I held it under light. It said, "What now?" I dropped the picture. I must be mistaken. Or maybe I'd seen the photo before, and that's why I dreamed what I did. That must have been it. Something interrupted my train of thought. A buzzing from one of the machines outside. I rose and stepped out of the trailer and crossed the yard. I climbed to the cab of one of the pieces of excavation equipment that was working. I told the driver to shut it down, but I still heard the buzzing. I grabbed one of the foremen outside. "Do we have any other machines running?" I yelled to him. "Just a few generators," he shrugged. "Shut them down, now," I ordered. "Why? What's going on?" he inquired, concerned. "Nothing. I just need all machines stopped for a minute." I yelled back again, and began wandering around the lot trying to find the source of the noise. All machines were off. Still, I could hear the buzzing. It was coming from the river. It was coming from the cube. I walked back over to the foreman. "Do you hear that?" I yelled. He shrugged. I ran back into the office and closed the door. It was getting louder, but not for everyone. I didn't want to meet the same fate as Bill, so I let the crews resume work and promptly left to go home early, faking illness. That night, I tried to stay up indefinitely. I didn't want to dream of the cube. I left my bedroom and crept into the living room. All was silent. I sat sipping coffee on the couch. I tried to surf the internet to keep myself awake. I fell asleep. I dreamed I was in the desert. I was walking not knowing where I was going, not knowing where I was. I stopped, and as I looked down, I noticed something. It was a tiny cube of concrete. I held it in my hand, and it was smooth and cool. Suddenly, it started to grow. Buildings rose up around me, cities, landscapes. The cube became too heavy, and I dropped it. I was standing in a small stream. The stream began to grow with the cube, as the cube was sinking in the stream. Then it was too heavy, and sunk to the bottom. The river and the city continued to grow, the cube growing heavier, and then sinking down below the riverbed. I was somewhere floating above it all, and I felt this great misery that I had dropped the cube. I felt like I was supposed to hold on to it. I felt like a failure. I realized I was every person on Earth, and I had failed this thing by dropping it. The cube, which I could somehow see below ground, turned red, and he was angry. I came to know, as you do in dreams, that if I had killed myself, if I had killed humanity, it would be satisfied again, and the cities would go away, and it would just be a small cube in the desert again. I wouldn't do it, so it became angry at me, and it hummed louder and louder until I woke up to my alarm. Thursday, March 15th, 2018. I drove to the worksite and began preparations for the media. All we were telling them was that there'd be more traffic delays. Of course, because that's all people care about. Not where the fucking cube came from, or why it's there, or the fact that it's humming and wants to destroy us all. Just the fact that the bridge will take longer, and it will mean more traffic delays. The public went, that's interesting, and they moved on. I went into the office. Faraj came in behind me. He was briefing me on the updates. His usual even tenor was off. His usually perfectly stiff shirt was wrinkled. He was sweating, and he had bags under his eyes. So they'll start work to incorporate it into the bridge structure. He spoke quietly. Faraj? I looked into his eyes. Can you hear that? He nodded. And the industrial divers, and some more of the crew. And it's getting louder, he added. When we build it into the bridge, will that stop? I asked him hopefully. I don't know, he said with force. And that's where we are today. We're building a cube into the bridge, like it's nothing, like it doesn't make a sound, like it doesn't take over our dreams and our actions, and that it doesn't have some sort of hell-bent will to get rid of us. We're going to just build a bridge on top of it, and hope that eventually anyone near it, anyone who crosses the bridge, anyone in the city, the country, the world, doesn't hear it humming. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers. I'm not sure how much longer I have left to write this. Karen is staring and, quite frankly, she's the office bitch, so there's no telling how long I have before she tattles on me to the boss. So I'll just cut to the chase. I work for a public relations agency in Boston, Massachusetts. We've all done it. Giggled at the lonely stranger talking to themselves in the aisles of the grocery store. Grinned at the elderly tourist staring aimlessly at nothing amidst the busyness of a bustling city street. We give them a passing glance, have our brief smile, or perhaps our moment of feeling sorry for these folks. And then we move on. We head back to our day-to-day lives. That's just what I was doing, going about my day-to-day life, when I started to question just how out of touch the folks I just referred to really are. Perhaps they're in touch with a world that's just beyond our own, just beyond the grasp of everyday society. A darker world. It was Wednesday night, late in September, and I'd just gotten in from a lengthy business trip. I arrived home to find my wife laid up in bed with a terrible migraine headache, and my children sitting on the couch, wrapped up in a heated game of trivia on the PlayStation. There really isn't any way for me to not sound like a jerk here, but I was road weary, beaten down from 8 hours of staring at asphalt, and just wanted to flop down onto the couch and put the time on the road behind me. But, with the kids on the couch and the wife laying in bed surrounded by darkness, I was officially out of places to sit my tired old butt. So after long overdue embraces to my son and daughter, and a kiss on my ailing wife's forehead, I found myself leaning back against the kitchen counter. I stood there in silence, staring at the stove and listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, trying to decide what to make for dinner. Cooking was the last thing I felt like doing. Yet, there I stood, perhaps waiting for supper to prepare itself. I opened the fridge about 6 times, each time looking into the illuminated box, only to close the door while shaking my head when I found nothing to my liking. That sealed it. I wasn't in the mood to cook, but I damn sure was in the mood to eat. With my wife sick in bed, and the kids actually getting along, I decided my best bet was to just run out and grab food for the family. I really didn't feel like getting back in the car, but after a full day of driving, what was 20 more minutes? So I pulled the rest of the house on what to grab for everyone. I live in a little community just off the interstate, but with a population of just over 3,000, our options are limited to the standard small-town fare. Pizza, Chinese, Mexican, and a tiny diner that offered home cooking style meals were about our only choices, not counting the handful of fast food joints just off the interstate exit. My wife didn't care, as long as she didn't have to deal with it. My daughter wanted chicken wings, and my son wanted seafood. I was up for anything as long as I could get everyone's food at the same place. Getting back behind the wheel was fine. Running all over town was a different story entirely. However, with the choices my kids came back with, my options were limited. Fast food was out, and so was the little Mexican place on the far side of town. I could get shrimp there, but they didn't have chicken wings. The pizza place in the strip mall had wings, but No seafood on the menu. That left the Chinese place. They made both of the items my kids were looking for: fried shrimps and wings. My wife always got the same thing, so I wouldn't have to pester her about the menu, and I'd never been known to turn down an order of General Tso's chicken. I went to the living room and got everyone's okay with my choice before calling the order in. An order of fried shrimp, an order of 8 wings, an order of chicken and broccoli, and finally, my order of General Tso with a side of sweet and sour soup. I was informed that it would be about 15 minutes. That's just about how long it took to get from my house on the outskirts of town to the little Chinese takeout. I asked my kids to set the table once their current game of trivia ended before making my way out the door. Even though I spend a third of my working life behind the wheel, I don't mind driving around if I'm close to home. My little piece of America is what I think a small town should be. Friendly faces, people waving as you pass by, and a real sense of community. People at the grocery store know your name. Police officers ask about your kids, and the checkout girl at the gas station knows how you like your coffee. That's probably why I'd be so shocked by the time sun rose the next morning. Since I'm so fond of the place I call home, I'm always happy to drive through the place. Being such a nice day, I put the windows down in my Chevy, turned up the Hank Jr., and made my way across town to the takeout place. Being on the south side of town, it took a while to get to Ming's number 1 on the far north side of town. It was only about 4 miles, but when you factor in neighborhood streets and winding roads, the minutes add up. The carryout shared a parking lot with a small laundromat. The proprietor of the restaurant also owned the laundromat, though I'd never formally met the man. I knew his face from school functions I'd attended over the years, as one of his sons was in the same grade as my daughter. I pulled into the parking lot, slipping my truck into one of the 3 remaining open parking slots. There were 12 spots in the little shared parking lot. It seemed pretty busy for a Wednesday night. I got out from behind the wheel and walked into the restaurant, holding the door for a younger guy that had his hands full with multiple bags of his own. When I stepped to the counter, the familiar face of a pretty young Asian woman smiled at me and said, "You're General Tso and sweet sour soup, right?" I nodded. Like I said, small town. "Okay, just 1 minute. I get whole order," she stated, slipping out of view into the kitchen behind me. As I stood waiting at the counter, I heard the front door open behind me. An old woman, hunched at the shoulders, with stringy white hair that hung loosely around her face, walked through the door. She wore a white blouse and dark slacks, pulled high on her waist and clinched tight over her belly button. Her face was pale, the skin wrinkled, and matching the veiny flesh that pulled against long, bony fingers on her hands. Her eyes were sunken and dark. Hers was a face I did not recall seeing before. But it wasn't her face that caught my attention. It was the baby doll she was cradling in her left arm. Nothing really out of the ordinary about it, just a regular run-of-the-mill doll with plastic limbs and an all-plastic head sewn onto a stuffed torso. Absent of any clothing, the torso was just a stained, rather dingy white color. It wasn't the talking type or the kind of toy that pees and poops, but just a standard old, boring baby doll. And she was talking to it. I cannot tell just what the old woman was saying to the doll, as she stroked the plastic hair on its head with her long, pale finger. Her voice was lower than a whisper, very raspy, and completely inaudible. Her lips moved slowly, as did the hand that rubbed the toy's forehead. She seemed to be trying to soothe it. The whole thing was a little off-putting, but I've seen the horrible effects of dementia on the elderly, so I passed it off and turned my attention back to the counter. I was just in time to see the young woman come out from the kitchen with 2 bags of food. I quickly paid for my carryout, exchanged parting pleasantries with the checkout girl, and turned to leave the restaurant. As I began to pass the elderly woman, who still appeared to be comforting the doll, I stepped out toward my left to give her a little extra room. Grabbing the handle to the exit, I lurched backward as the old woman's hand shot from the plastic toy's forehead and wrapped tightly around my exposed forearm. With surprising strength, her cold fingers pressed into my skin. I'd like to think I could have pulled away with ease, but I can't swear that to be true. Besides, even though the shock hadn't yet worn off, I had no desire to hurt the old woman. I turned to face her, to see if she needed help. I looked into those sunken eyes and asked if she was okay. She returned my gaze, and amazingly, her grip tightened. It actually began to hurt. She looked frightened. "You have to help us," she said, her voice shaky and weak. "I've never seen so many." "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean," I replied. She pulled her gaze from mine and looked through the glass door and into the parking lot. I followed her gaze and looked toward the cars outside. Everything looked as it did when I arrived. "The black souls outside." She began to tremble. "The demon men. They are everywhere." Tears began to well up in the old woman's eyes. She released her grip on my forearm and raised a frail finger toward the window. She pointed toward the vehicles in the lot and began to sob loudly. Through the tears, she forced herself to speak again. "They bring death. They're crawling all over everything." At that moment, the door beside us opened, and an elderly man, sporting a neatly trimmed beard and leaning on a cane, stepped into the carryout. He moved forward slowly, taking the trembling woman's hand in his own before pulling it to his chest. "It's okay, Ingrid. Stay calm. Everything is okay," he whispered to her. The gentleman then turned to me, and then smiled warmly. "I'm sorry, young man. She becomes confused on occasion these days." "It's no trouble, sir," I replied, holding the door for the couple as he led her back into the parking lot. I assumed they'd been in the laundromat, but she wandered away. Heading out of the carryout myself, I kept one eye on the elderly pair's direction as I climbed into my pickup, setting the 2 bags of dinner in the passenger seat of the truck. I watched as he rubbed her shoulders gently, trying to soothe the frazzled woman, very much like she'd been doing with the baby doll. He spoke to her softly, but the old woman's head kept moving from side to side. She seemed to be searching the parking lot for something. A little unnerved and ready for a belly full of General Tso's chicken, I began to back up, staring into the rearview mirror and finally taking my eyes off the couple. That's when the screaming started. "Don't make me go back in there," the woman screamed, fighting back tears. "The evil is everywhere in there." That was enough for me. I began to put up the windows while simultaneously pulling toward the exit of the parking lot. Still, I couldn't help one last glance towards the front of the laundromat. Morbid curiosity, I guess. To this day, I wish I'd have just kept driving. Standing there, with her slender, jagged figure pointing in my direction, the old woman screamed out to me. This time, a warning. The black souls bring death, and next, they come for you. The words were garbled and strained, but they were clear. A cold chill ran down my spine as I turned the truck away and pulled on the street, nearly clipping a beat-up old Ford as it sped recklessly into the carry-out parking lot. In the 15 minutes it took to get home, I lost myself in the warm autumn air and the music blasting out of my speakers. With the exception of the local cop flying past me, and his lights flashing and siren blaring, the ride had been peaceful, allowing me to shake off the incident at the Chinese place. Once through my front door, I dished out the kids' meals and carried my wife's dinner, as well as my own, upstairs to where she was resting off the migraine. I didn't want her to eat alone. I opened her chicken and broccoli and proceeded to set up a folding tray for her to rest the food on. Only it wasn't chicken and broccoli. The restaurant had screwed up and sent her beef instead. Always something, isn't it? Had it been my food that was screwed up, I'd just grin and bear it. However, my wife doesn't eat red meat. I offered her the General Tso, but she wasn't feeling well and didn't want anything spicy. I got that and wrapped the beef and broccoli back up to take back so the takeout place could get it right. Ignoring her objection, I closed the lid on my dinner and called Ming's number 1 to inform them of the error and hopefully expedite my trip a bit. Strangely, they did not answer. In 7 years of calling in for takeout there, I can't recall a single time they'd failed to pick up the phone. Annoyed but undeterred, I took the incorrect dish out to the truck and headed back to the restaurant. The sun had dipped below the trees for most of the ride, and the air wasn't quite as warm as it had been just 20 minutes before. I noticed, as I pulled onto the main road through our little town, that there were no cars coming toward me. In fact, the only vehicles I saw at all were 2 state police cars that tore past me in the same direction I was going. I recall thinking that it must have been a nasty wreck on the interstate. Big rigs seemed to turn over once every couple of months. That was about the most excitement our police department ever saw. At least until that afternoon. As I neared the carryout place, I noticed that traffic ahead of me had stopped. 2 state police cars had pulled across the 2-lane road that ran through the heart of town, facing one another, headlights to headlights. They were detouring traffic to a side road on the left. I muttered under my breath and tried to call the Chinese place once again. Finally, someone answered. "Sorry, we're closed." The words came quick and sharply, and then the woman on the far end of the line ended the call. Irritated, but ready to accept defeat, I turned the car around right there in the middle of the street and proceeded to the only pizza place in town. I placed my order for a personal-sized cheese and sat down in a booth while I waited. While ordering, the teen behind the counter asked me if I had any idea what all the sirens had been about. Of course, I didn't have a clue. But as we discussed the topic, another siren squealed in the distance. My curiosity was up. One of my fishing buddies was a volunteer firefighter in town, whom I figured might know what was going down. I shot him a quick text. "What's up with all the cops?" His reply came almost immediately, and it left me a little queasy. "Can't talk about it. Just know it's bad. Stay home and hug your kids." The response was chilling. Not one to gossip, I kept what little I now knew to myself and sat in silence. Once the pizza was ready, I took it home and handed the box to my wife. I told her something was going on in town, but we didn't really discuss it any farther. We ate quickly, sitting up on the bed and watching television. With her head still hurting, she went to bed early. After cleaning up dinner, I played a handful of trivia games with the kids before ushering them off to showers and bed. Once they'd headed off to sleep, I popped open the internet and checked to see if anyone on social media had commented on all of the police presence in town. All I found was a single post from one of my wife's coworkers that read simply, "Prayers for our community." That was it. No comments, nothing more. It all seemed strange. Shortly, I succumbed to the rigors of the road and nodded off on the couch. When I woke up the next morning, all of my questions from the previous day were answered as soon as I turned on the television. One of the local reporters for a station out of nearby Knoxville was standing in front of Ming's number 1 in the adjoining laundromat. Behind her, police officers milled about the parking lot behind multiple runs of yellow police tape, coming in and out of the laundry door. Other news crews could be seen in the frame as well, as some men in suits and others in what looked like hazmat suits. I noticed the beat-up Ford that had almost hit my truck the day before, still sitting in the parking lot. I listened as the reporter detailed the event. A man, in his early 30s, had walked into the laundromat looking for his ex-wife. He'd found her doing laundry with her new boyfriend. According to a witness that preferred to remain anonymous, the man then opened fire on everyone inside. He'd killed 7 people before turning the gun on himself. The news report showed photos of the victims, one by one across the screen. I recognized 3 of them. One of those lost was the teller at my bank. I saw her through the driveway every other week when I'd cash my expense checks. Her name was Lisa, and she was 6 months pregnant. Another worked behind the counter of the gas station where I'd buy my bait during walleye season. The last victim the news mentioned was a special needs student that went to the same school as my kids. I sat in silence for a long time. I could not believe such evil had come to our little town. Then I remembered the old woman. I remembered the terror in her eyes when she talked about the black souls surrounding the laundromat. The shakiness in her voice when she said they brought death. Had she been right? Could she really see something the rest of us could not? Was she more in tune with the world beyond this one? Because she was getting close to joining it. My blood ran cold. And then I thought about her jagged finger. That finger, pale and veiny, pointing at me, warning me that next time the black souls, those bringers of death, were coming for me. And I think about that old woman and her warning every night when I lay down to sleep. When I wake, will those black-souled bringers of death be waiting for me? Assuming they'd let me wake up at all. Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick moment to let you know I just added 3 new t-shirt designs to my merch store. I'm super excited about an awesome shirt. She's in her 90s, and she was a surgeon before she retired. Last March, my wife and I moved into our first home, a quiet suburban neighborhood in the Midwest, backing up to a few hundred acres of woods. The cul-de-sac has about 10 homes, and mine is at the very top of the street. Everyone here is great, but there's something off with my elderly neighbor. The first thing I noticed is that she never has any lights on when she's home. Every night the house remains pitch black. I see her looking through the window that faces our home. I swear she is looking at us every night. I first attempted to speak with her a week after we moved in. I don't know her name, so I call her Agnes. It seems fitting. Agnes was in her yard, at the edge of her lawn near the sidewalk, just standing still. I was walking my dog, and we made our way past Agnes' home. My hand tensed on the leash as my dog lunged towards her. He absolutely lost his mind when he saw Agnes. My little beagle, who loves everyone, turned into a feral beast as he snarled and snapped at her. I grabbed my dog and held him as I attempted to calm him down. Luckily, we were still a good 20 feet away from Agnes. "I am so sorry," I said. I have no idea what got into him. He usually likes everyone. I waited for her response. It never came. I was able to get a good look at her. She was small and thin, with snow-white hair and gray eyes, baggy blue pants, and a long brown coat covered her small frame. I have since figured out that this is the only outfit she wears, every single day. I spoke again. "Really, I'm sorry. He doesn't bite, but regardless, I never let him off the leash." Still nothing. She continued to stare. After a few awkward seconds, Agnes took a few steps backward and picked up a long object that had been hiding in the tall grass of her lawn. It was a shovel. She picked it up by the handle and pointed the rusty metal spade at me, and then to my dog. I didn't know what to say. Sorry again. And I walked away. It is not just my dog that does this. It's every dog that sees Agnes. Whether it is the usual neighborhood dogs, or ones from nearby subdivisions. They all go crazy, barking and lurching towards her. Agnes continues to stand there, sometimes armed with a shovel. For this, I feel badly for her. For all I know, she was attacked in the past. It just amazes me that I have yet to see a dog act normally around her. The second oddity happened a few months ago, around 5 a.m. I woke up early on a Saturday morning to start barbecuing. I noticed Agnes down the street. She was outside another neighbor's house, digging through their trash. Although that is strange in itself, it is not what shocked me. Whenever I see Agnes in the middle of the day, she is walking slowly, hunched over, and usually with the help of her walker. Not this morning. She was moving fine without it, and fast, really fast. Agnes was jogging around the trash cans with the agility of someone in their early 20s. What she did next truly stunned me. A neighbor had thrown out an old wooden bookcase. I saw Agnes bend down to grab it. "Please don't hurt yourself," I whispered to myself. I started walking towards her to give a helping hand. She lifted the bookcase like it was nothing. I simply don't understand how this old woman could have managed it. She was most likely 90 pounds, soaking wet. As soon as she saw me walking towards her, she dropped it. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I was just seeing if you needed help," I said. She didn't respond. She simply looked at me, then slowly limped towards her house, as if she had lost the ability of the youthful movement I had just seen. I picked up the bookcase and walked it over to the curb. It weighed a ton. Things got serious when someone broke in. I think it was Agnes. My wife and I returned home one night after hanging out at a friend's house. We had the dog with us as well. As the three of us walked in, I could feel that something was wrong. My suspicion was verified as I entered my bedroom. 2 human-shaped lumps were under the sheets. In a panic, I pulled the sheets back and prepared to strike with the bat I held in the other hand. Pillows and clothes. That's all I found. Someone had placed them there in order to look like bodies. It was both terrifying and perplexing. I raced down to check the footage of my security camera. The lens faces my front door and kitchen. The only motion it recorded was the quick flash of someone walking just out of the camera's range. Someone wearing blue and brown. Needless to say, I changed the locks. I didn't change them when we first moved in. She may have had a spare key from the former owner of our home. Since there was no broken glass or locks, she must have come through the side door. The door that faces Agnes' house. This latest incident takes the cake. Literally. Last night, I found out that my wife is pregnant. We haven't told anyone yet, and are planning on having a big reveal for our family and friends this weekend. I opened the door this morning and noticed something on the porch. There was a cake, or what used to be a cake. It was disgusting, covered in green mold with unlit black candles stuck in the rotten icing. Next to the cake was an old rag doll with frayed red hair and black button eyes. I picked up the doll and looked over towards Agnes's house. She was outside, staring at me, and digging a small hole with that damn shovel. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below. Time went by, but the profound remorse remained. It's still smoldering as my heart is beating. I can't remember the last time I slumbered in peace after that night. I've been told to exteriorize these feelings, to free them from my inner cage. 5 years ago, Holly, my only daughter, turned 6. Time is fragile. It fades with each clickety-clack of the clock. However, calling it a blessing or a curse, the worthy memories remain, vivid as if living them today. Her 6th birthday earned its eternal place in the burrows of my mind. Not due to her joyous smile, nor due to the love brimming in the atmosphere of our garden. It earned its place because that night, she met her imaginary friend, Darren. Let's talk about Holly. She was my treasure, the one I would forever cherish, love, and protect with my very life and soul. She glowed. She just did. There's no other way around it. She was polite, witty for her age, charming, and effective. The concepts of lion pride never made their way into her being. She never hesitated to say, "I love you," or "I hate you." She only knew truth and innocence. Words of a father, you might be thinking, and you are right. I did know pride, thanks to her. Our whole family gathered for her 6th birthday. It was a crowded event, to say the least. Fortunately, it went swimmingly. Cake on the table, Holly eager to extinguish the candle's fiery flames as we all sang happy birthday. "Don't forget your wishes, darling," said my mother with a broad smile. Holly clapped to the beat. Her features expressed sheer happiness. That same magical feeling we felt on Christmas night when we were children, when our imagination convinced us of the existence of a fat, white, bearded man clad in a red suit climbing down our chimneys to leave us presents. We didn't know what the world was capable of. We didn't care. Holly was no different. The idea of an imaginary friend made sense. The next morning, she came to the table, gave me and her mother a good morning kiss, and joined us in our delicious task to devour a pile of hotcakes. "Mom, I want to eat veggies today at lunch," she said. Both my wife and I gazed at each other with a frown filled with confusion. She hated veggies. "Sure, sweetie. Anything for my precious princess," my wife said, pinching Holly's cheeks. "I told you they were tasty," I said, and smiled at her. Strangely, she turned her eyes away from me and stared downward. "Holly?" She shut her eyes tight. She believed that when she closed her eyes, she disappeared briefly and wouldn't open them. "Holly, what are you hiding?" I asked, worried. This was not a normal behavior of hers. She only did it when she made a mistake. Her eyes opened, and she sighed audibly, as if defeated. "I didn't taste any veggie," she confessed. "Darren told me I had to be a good girl and eat them. Otherwise, Santa would bring me coal and ash instead of a puppy this Christmas." "Come again? Who's Darren?" I asked, and leaned forward, making sure I didn't miss a single word. She covered her eyes with her palms. "Holly, I can see you. Who is this Darren?" At this point, my wife grabbed my forearm and signaled for me to remain calm by pushing both her hands in a downward motion, as if pushing the air. Holly gave up. Yesterday, I wished for a new friend, and my wish was granted. Darren lives in my wardrobe. He visited me last night, she said, and found refuge in a big hotcake bite. An imaginary friend. I had them too, I thought to myself, and switched the conversation to another topic. At least he seems to give her good advice. How wrong I was. The next couple of days, everything went fine. Nothing out of the ordinary. We grew accustomed to hearing her talk by herself late at night. Out of curiosity, I have examined the wardrobe and found nothing. Holly did try veggies and fell in love with spinach. Naturally, I showed her Popeye, one of my favorite cartoons. There's an inflection point to everything. It had been 6 days since she confessed Darren's existence. That morning, the joy of her smile turned into pouting lips, downcast eyes, and despondent gait. She didn't even kiss us good morning. Holly, what's wrong, princess? Her mother asked, caressing her arm. Holly shut her eyes and refused to open them, longer than ever before. 10 minutes had gone by, and we didn't know what to do. Holly, we are not playing anymore. We can see you. Did Darren upset you? I asked, on the verge of losing my temper. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but at least she nodded. Good. I will go to have a talk with Darren right now and fix this, I said, and pretended to stand. No! She screamed, eyes wide open. You can't talk to him. I frowned. Why is that? He is in a bad mood lately. He says that you are both stupid adults and that I shouldn't believe you. Tears intensified. I stood and cradled her. She wasn't a baby anymore, but my instinct guided me. Listen to me, princess. If he treats you bad, you come to our bedroom, okay? I'll have a talk with him while you're in school. She nodded and finished her breakfast. Claudia and I left her at school and then went to our respective jobs. We both agreed that if Darren didn't disappear, a psychologist would be a must. I asked my boss for a day off under the excuse that I was feeling feverish. He told me to take as many days as needed. We've known each other for a long time and had a great relationship. I came back home early. I felt the need to research about these imaginary friends. How did you handle such an intangible subject that affected the mood of your kid? May this be an early sign of a mental sickness? Doubts flooded my mind. I had to arm myself with knowledge to protect my daughter. A cold gust of wind blew my notes away. Damn, I've got to shut the window this morning, I thought, and kept reading. After a while, I needed fuel, so I went to the kitchen In the way, I found a pink crayon on the floor. Hiring a cleaning lady might be a good idea. I researched a lot throughout the day. Most papers said the same thing. Imaginary friends are normal, part of their lives. Yet when they impulse your child to misbehave, it was a good idea to seek for therapy as early as possible. They also suggested to try and hear a conversation and try to analyze the current of thought of your child. That's what I did. The night fell. Dinner filled my stomach. I talked with my wife about my plan. She agreed, under the terms, to not wake her up. I hid in the bathroom. It was next to Holly's bedroom, and pressed my ear against the wall to hear as much as I could. That's a bad idea, Darren. I won't do that, Darren. It's dangerous. My father will scold me. I will do it if you promise to talk instead of write for once. My heart sunk. The window. The crayon. Holly tiptoed towards the kitchen. She didn't notice me in the shadows. Could it be? Is my imagination tricking me? A few seconds later, Holly tiptoed back to her bedroom. She held something behind her back. Her gait was careful, soundless. She crossed the bathroom door, and I peeked to see what she hid. A knife. Before she reached her bedroom, I grabbed her and covered her mouth, suppressing the scream. Sheer fear imbued her eyes. I beckoned for her to go with her mother and took the knife from her hands. She nodded, and I gingerly placed her back into the ground. I pressed my index finger against my lips, signaling her to remain silent. She tiptoed to our bedroom. With the knife tightly clasped on my hand and my jaw clenched, I walked towards Holly's room. I didn't feel fear. The deep hatred of someone perturbing my daughter drowned it. The adrenaline swarmed my veins, heart pummeling. A triangle of light escaped towards the hall. The door was upholstered. I pushed the door. Sitting, with a red crayon on his hand, was a shirtless, anorexic man. Bones visible through his paper-like skin. I shuddered. I'd never seen eyes as dead as his, expressionless, bloodshot, and unreadable. He stared deep into my pupils, unblinking as he wrote. The fear grew and crippled my body. What is this monster? He raised the paper and smiled exaggeratedly, displaying no teeth nor tongue. Her core, a sweet fruit. I let the knife fall. I wouldn't need it. I surged towards him and kicked his face. He didn't flinch, nor did he resist. He fell limp to the floor, bleeding. I kneeled over him, snatched his neck, eyes inhumanly wide. Hatred defeated fear and rushed towards my fist. The crack of his windpipe soothed my existence. He was dead, but I wouldn't stop. Not until I disfigured that fucking smile out of his cadaverous face. The warm blood bathed my fist and stained the floor. "What did you do to her, motherfucker? What did you do to her?" I yelped as I massacred him. Holly stood in the doorframe, motionless, staring at our bed. It might have been the adrenaline shock, but I missed the details as I ran. I missed the dripping knife in Holly's hand. I missed the trail of blood meandering through the carpet, staining her tiny feet. I missed the stranger seeding ideas into my daughter's brain. I missed the second knife in Holly's pocket. But I didn't miss my wife's corpse, slain at the throat, jugular blasting voraciously, and... Don't worry, Daddy. Darren told me he would heal her. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, I still play her voicemail every night before I sleep. Chase, this is Serena. What time are we going to study for the AP Calc exam? Hit me up. Her voice is sweet, and when she says, I convince myself that it's because she's nervous. As if Serena would be nervous to talk to a nerd like me. She was perfect. A model student, beautiful inside and out. But she always dressed modestly and was kind to everyone. That's why I crushed on her so hard. Of course, she had a boyfriend, Derek, a starting varsity lacrosse player, and definitely not someone who had a seat in our AP Calculus class. He wasn't an idiot by any stretch, and I'd heard he'd gotten into the University of Connecticut Psych program. Not bad. But Serena would have been at MIT or Yale, with me, had I not dropped out of school after what happened. Had Serena not been found dead. Serena went missing on December 6, 2016. For 18 days, police poured over a quiet New England town, knocking on doors and organizing citizen searches. I participated too, of course. Those 18 days were sleepless, unable to concentrate or exams or eat. I'd spend my time after school and during winter break searching for her. Sometimes with others, but often alone. Each day, I'd play her voicemail on the bus home from school and convince myself that she was nervous to talk to me. I'd be sure that, secretly, she loved me, and that if I found her, if I was the one to rescue her, she would realize she loved me all along, and we would be together. I was going to find her, and she would be mine forever. Unfortunately, I did find her. It was Christmas Eve. The ground was covered in an inch of snow that had fallen a few days before. I was searching an abandoned quarry at sunset when I discovered a trail of smashed glass. High school kids often come to places like this to drink beer, so it wasn't unusual. But I followed the trail anyway to the mouth of a mining cave. There was no reason to go inside, and I didn't have a flashlight, so I turned around. That's when my phone vibrated. Serena glowed on my screen for the briefest second before the call showed as unanswered. My blood froze, and my heart pounded. I immediately called her back. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. Heavy breathing from coarse, broken lungs came through the speaker, gasping as if it hurt to breathe, each breath like cloth tearing through a thorn bush. Chase? Serena's sweet but broken voice. Serena? Where are you? Coarse breaths. I'm inside. I need you. Help me. The call ended. I stared into the cave. It was black inside, and all I had for a flashlight was my phone. Was Serena in there? Was there someone in there with her? She sounded like she was hurt. I have to go in there and save her. We were meant to be together, but whoever took her could be dangerous. No, I will save her, and she will realize she loves me, and she will be mine. But my legs wouldn't move. I was as frozen as the snow on the ground. I stared into the darkness of the cave as a breeze blew out and chilled every bone in my body. And then, closer, faster, closer, faster. I turned around and ran, sprinted all the way home. I dashed up to my room, locked the door, and hid in the closet. Then, I called the police and told them everything. A few hours later, the police were at my doorstep. They questioned me about what happened, and I gave them as detailed an account as I could. They then told me what they found. The police found Serena in the cave, her body lifeless. And though the cause of death was uncertain at the time, the police believed it to be murder, as several of her ribs were broken and one had even punctured her lung. I was devastated and immediately broke down in tears. Had I only been braver, maybe I could have saved her. Had I been an athlete like her boyfriend Derek, had I been strong and confident, maybe I could have overpowered the killer and she would still be alive. Instead, I'd run home and hid in my closet. And as a result, Serena had died a horrible, brutal death. But it wasn't true. None of it. Because the officer told me Serena's body had decomposed to such an extent she'd been dead for a week. We have to confiscate your phone as evidence, the officer said as I sat there, confused and in tears. The person who called you could be a suspect. But I couldn't let them have my phone. Her voicemail was on my phone. That was my last remnant of her, and her giddy, nervous voice proved she loved me. I made it up, I said. The part about getting the phone call, it never happened. Now, why would you say that? The officer asked. I went inside the cave and saw her body. It scared me so much that I ran home. I wanted to be taken seriously, so I made up the part about her calling me. My explanation made no sense, but the officer, realizing that I was in shock, didn't press me further. I asked him one final question. Did you recover any of her belongings? Nothing made sense. I went to bed and slept for 16 hours. There was no cheer on Christmas Day for me, or anyone in my family. I sat alone in my room, thinking about it all. I played her voicemail, and cried every time. I wanted to call her number, but pressing send was like standing before the mouth of that cave, frozen, my blood chilled to ice. Who was going to pick up? Who had I talked to yesterday? We were meant to be together. I'm not an athlete, nor am I popular, but I'm intelligent, like her. We could have gone to MIT together. We could have gotten married and had kids, a boy and a girl. We could make our family breakfast every morning. We could be happy. She secretly loved me, so I pressed send. The phone rang 3 times. Chase, you ran away. Her voice, the sweetest it had ever sounded. I broke down in tears. I'm sorry. Serena. Please forgive me. I forgive you, Chase. You know, I've always loved you. I love you too. We can be together, Chase. Forever. How? Come back to the cave at sunset. And this time, don't run away. The call ended. I tried to call her back. I got the message that her phone had been switched off. It was out of service area. So at sunset, I returned to the cave. There was police tape and a barricade around the mouth now. The snow on the ground was melting into a slippery slush. My phone vibrated for only a second. It was another missed call from Serena. I called her back. Chase, my love. I'm here. Good. We'll be together soon. Now just face the cave and close your eyes. What? Why? You'll hear him come for you. Let him take you, Chase. Who? He'll bring you to me. We'll be together forever. This doesn't make sense. Be brave, my love. Her voice distorted, deep, and out of tune. Now close your eyes and don't open them. Even deeper now. Almost inhuman. Not until you're with me. She hung up. I stared at the mouth of the cave. Was there any point in living if I couldn't be with her? If I couldn't make her breakfast every morning and raise our boy and girl together? After all, we had been waiting all this time to admit our feelings, to finally love each other as we were meant to. I closed my eyes. Footsteps approaching from inside the cave. Getting closer. Getting faster. Closer, faster, closer, faster. I opened my eyes. In the second before I turned and ran, I saw a naked man with gray, elephant-like skin coming out of the cave. All I remember is that he had no eyes. Where his eyes should have been, there were teeth. Almost a year has passed. A year filled with despair, depression, and unrealized aspirations. But at least I'm alive. I'm not a brave man, and that's what saved me. I still listen to her voicemail daily. I still believe we were meant to be together. But when she miscalls me every day at sunset, I don't call her back. I don't phone the dead. And neither should you. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you
At Brandless, we're all about making better stuff for fewer dollars. We've created non-GMO food, organic snacks, gluten-free baking mixes, clean beauty and personal care, non-toxic cleaning products and housewares, tree-free paper goods, and much more.
The legend goes that if you sit upon the throne of the little people, you will die in 7 years. Well, almost exactly 7 years ago, 3 friends and I did just that. 2 of them died yesterday, in separate incidents across the country. Back then, we were college buddies and ghost hunters. Abandoned asylums filled with asbestos, Civil War-era graveyards, and haunted railroad tracks. Nothing scared us. Only one thing ever did. And that was the village of the little people. It's in Middlebury, Connecticut, not far from a restaurant called Maggie McFly's. The first semester of our senior year was ending, and on the way back from a road trip to New York, we decided to go for a ghost hunt. A website called Damned Connecticut revealed the GPS coordinates of the Little People's Village, just a 20-minute detour from our route home. It was the last thing the 4 of us would ever do together. The village is in the middle of a forest. You may miss it, because it's quite small. Doll-sized houses fill a clearing in the woods. Little pathways connect the houses to each other. And then all the pathways lead to a single point: the throne. Unlike the houses, the throne is human-sized. We read about the legend on the website. Sit upon the throne, and you die in 7 years. And one after another, we all sat upon the throne, taking pictures and joking that since we now had 7 years to live, we might as well make the most of it. I was the 3rd to sit, and the first 2 who did are dead. What scared us that day happened on the way out, as we were leaving the forest. It was a foggy night, so we all carried flashlights. As we walked, little footsteps pattered on the ground, several yards behind us. Someone, or something, was following us. With our flashlights, we turned around and scanned the area. And then, we all saw something none of us could explain. In the distance, several pairs of eyes glowed in the darkness, as if belonging to creatures the size of a doll. And when we shone our flashlights upon them, the creatures scampered away, their footsteps pitter-pattering. Laughter, like that of children, echoed through the woods. We ran back to the car and drove away. One of my friends claimed she got a good look, that she clearly saw a little person. I still remember Hannah's words. It had the body of a baby doll, except its hands were just fingerless stumps. all I could see of its face were round, glowing eyes. The ride home was awkward. Our other two friends reasoned that the eyes belonged to forest animals, but I could tell they were shaken up, and I didn't know what to believe. Hannah didn't back down, insisting that she saw a little person, and I did my best to support her without taking sides. I think Hannah felt bad that we didn't believe her, because she stopped hanging out with us after that. It was nice to have a girl in our little group, especially one as cool as her. Though, after graduation, we all drifted apart anyway. One friend became an engineer, the other a doctor. Hannah, I have no idea what happened to her. She seemed to drop off the earth. And myself, I never amounted to much. Despite, or maybe because of, majoring in astronomy, I work at Starbucks. I always dreamed of becoming the next Neil deGrasse Tyson, or maybe just starting an astronomy YouTube channel. But aside from owning a few telescopes, I don't do much with my passion. If I live past this day, I promise to make something of my life. If I live. At 6 p.m. yesterday, I got a call that my doctor friend was murdered while out for a morning jog. He lived in Washington State. Then at 9 p.m., I was informed that my engineer friend was killed while he walked home from work. He lived in Atlanta. Shocked at this turn of events, I checked the local news in each area to find out more. The description of their deaths was eerily similar. Both were found with their hands amputated and their blood drained. What are the chances? An hour later, Hannah knocked on my door. Her auburn hair was shorter now, but her smile was just how I remembered. Most striking, she was gym fit and 20 pounds lighter than when I knew her. Back then, she was the cool girl that would hang with the guys, but never the girl we all wanted. To be honest, though I never admitted it, I always felt a sense of comfort and warmth when I was with her. We sat on the couch of my little apartment and exchanged pleasantries.
skin crawl. But the task is done. Bring me back my equipment, please.
Once upon a time, there was an angel, and she was beautiful and loved by all.
She was perfect. No matter what Joey says.
Punching in.
I'll make this simple. Look for valve panels. Turn the little wheels. Then bring me their power cores. Please don't make me regret sparing you. I can always change my mind.
Another day, another dollar.
Quite the efficient little errand boy, aren't you?
There was a time people knew my name. It's Alice Angel, they'd say. It's like so long ago. But those days can come back. Dreams come true, Susie. Dreams come true.
I better get overtime for this.
You see those grinning demons? Let's remove them, shall we? I've got just the tool to make this even more enjoyable.
Always on time.
Now that was fun. Oh, I forgot to mention, he hates it when I do that. I would hide if I were you.
to the old grind. Punching in.